Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at what you might call a classic standoff.
Oh, absolutely. The classic immovable object meeting the irresistible force.
Right, because on one side you have the irresistible force of the housing market, this desperate need for homes in Northern Virginia.
And on the other side, you've got the immovable object, which in this case is a federally protected national park.
A park that is, supposed to be there forever.
Usually, in that staring contest, the national park wins hands down.
Yeah, you'd think so.
But today, we are unpacking a case where the outcome isn't nearly so clear-cut.
We're zooming in on Prince William County, Virginia, specifically a very, let's say, contentious meeting of the Board of Supervisors.
Very contentious. This was back on February 3rd, 2026.
And the subject of this whole debate was a piece of land, a property called La Benison.
Which is just a beautiful name. It actually translates to a blessing.
Ideally, yes, a blessing. But depending on who you asked at this meeting, this land is either a blessing for potential new homeowners or it's an absolute curse for the local environment.
Right, because we are talking about 33 acres of dense trees. And the proposal is to turn those trees into 75 homes.
But as we were looking through the sources, the staff reports, the transcripts, this isn't just a story about one single neighborhood.
No, it's way bigger than that.
It brings up this weird legal twilight zone called a legislative boundary. And it really poses a huge philosophical question.
Which is, if a comprehensive plan can be amended whenever a developer asks, is it actually a plan?
Exactly. Or is it just a suggestion? So our mission today is to figure out exactly what happened at that meeting, look at the unique status of this land, and see why this one local vote actually matters for the bigger picture of development everywhere.
Let's get right into it. First, we need to get our bearings.
Okay, so if you're looking at the maps from the county staff report, the property is located south of Route 234, that's Dumfries Road.
Right at a spot called Hideaway Drive.
Idaho Drive! And if you drove past it today, you wouldn't see like a big clearing or a subdivision sign.
No, you just see a forest. It's heavily forested. A really dense green canopy.
To any casual observer driving by, it looks exactly like it's just part of Prince William Forest Park.
And here is the critical detail. The thing that sets this whole debate in motion. It actually is inside the park's boundary.
Okay, wait. It lies entirely within the boundary of the park.
Entirely within it, yes.
But, and I know this is the big takeaway right off the bat, the park does not own this land.
They do not own it.
I mean, how does that even work? How can a piece of land be inside a national park boundary but not belong to the federal government? That sounds like a complete contradiction.
It does sound weird, but it comes down to a very specific legal term used in the staff report, the legislative boundary.
Okay, define that for us.
So a legislative boundary is essentially a line drawn on a map by Congress.
Congress draws the line.
Right. And by drawing that line, Congress gives the National Park Service the legal authority to acquire any land within that box.
If they want to.
If they want to. And this is the big if funding is available.
Ah, the funding. So it's sort of like a pre-approved shopping list for the park.
That's a great way to think about it. You can look at a house, you can save it to your favorites on Zillow, you have the pre-approval from the bank to buy it.
But until you actually write the check, it still belongs to whoever holds the deed.
Exactly. And in the case of La Benison, the federal government has just never written that check.
They've never bought it. So legally speaking, this is 100% private property.
100%.
Yeah.
Federal regulations do not apply to private owners just because they sit inside this legislative boundary.
Wow. Okay, so the owner can just do whatever the local county zoning allows them to do.
Correct. The federal government has no say over the zoning of that specific private parcel.
Which brings us to the owner of the parcel, Linda Carr. I was reading through the transcript of her testimony from the public hearing, and I have to say, she really humanized this entire debate.
She definitely did. She didn't come across as some faceless corporate developer trying to just pave over paradise.
No, not at all. She gave this really vivid personal backstory. She talked about how she and her husband named the property La Benison.
The blessing.
Right. And she talked about moving from Fairfax County years ago. She described a version of Fairfax that, honestly, I don't think exists anymore.
She mentioned they used to sell chickens and rabbits for food back in Fairfax.
Yeah, that detail really stood out to me. She watched that rural agricultural life in Fairfax completely disappear as it got more expensive and more crowded.
So they moved out to Prince William County. But now she's sitting on this 33-acre asset.
And her argument to the Board of Supervisors was actually pretty philosophical.
It was. She basically asked the room if it's really moral for one person to hoard 10 acres or even 4 acres of land when there are so many people who desperately need homes.
She framed it purely around resource efficiency. She said she doesn't think one person living on that much land is a good use of resources. She wants to build a neighborhood to bring people together.
That is the noble side of the argument for sure.
But let's be real about the economics here, too. She mentioned that her son and her nephew live in the county, and they struggle to find affordable, larger homes.
Right. And she clearly sees an opportunity here to unlock some serious generational wealth for her family.
Oh, absolutely. In a real estate market like Northern Virginia, 33 acres of buildable land is essentially a winning lottery ticket.
But only if you can get the zoning changed.
Right, the all-important zoning. So let's break down the numbers here. What can she actually build on this land right now versus what is she asking to build?
That gap between those two numbers is exactly where the conflict lies. So currently, the land is designated as parks and open space in the county's land use map.
Parks and open space. Okay.
And the actual zoning is A1, which stands for agricultural.
So what does A1 allow her to do?
By right, meaning if she just went to the county and applied for a building permit tomorrow without asking for any special favors, she could build about 3 homes.
3 homes on 33 acres.
Yes. So essentially, we're talking about 3 large rural estates.
Okay. And what is she asking the board for?
She is applying for a comprehensive plan amendment or a CPA. She wants to change that land use designation from parks and open space to something called residential neighborhood, Transact 2.
RN2. And what does RN2 allow?
It allows for a massive jump in density. The developer is proposing up to 75 homes.
75. That is a huge difference.
Specifically, they're looking at 23 single-family detached houses and 44 townhomes or attached units.
To go from 3 homes to 75 homes, I mean, you are fundamentally changing the entire character of that land.
You are. The staff report notes that the activity density goes from 0 people per acre, which is just trees, basically, to potentially 14 people per acre.
It completely shifts the site from acting as a conservation buffer for the park to being a low-intensity residential neighborhood.
Now, the proposal did include a bit of a sweetener regarding affordability.
Right, I saw that. They included 8 townhomes that would be designated as affordable.
Which, in a county experiencing a severe housing shortage isn't nothing.
No, it's not nothing. But as we'll see when we get into the board's debate, some supervisors were really skeptical about whether 8 affordable units is enough of a trade-off for losing 33 acres of forest.
And speaking of losing the forest, we have to talk about the opposition. Because the heavy hitters definitely showed up for this meeting.
Yeah, this wasn't just a couple of neighbors complaining about future construction traffic. The Prince William Conservation Alliance was there.
Ashley Studholm spoke on their behalf, and her argument focused entirely on the concept of a buffer.
A buffer for the national park.
Exactly. Prince William Forest Park is roughly 15,000 acres. It is a massive ecological resource for Northern Virginia.
It's like a giant green lung for the region.
And her point was that if you build high-density housing right up to the very edge of the park boundary, you inevitably degrade the interior of the park.
She specifically mentioned the Quantico Creek watershed, didn't she?
She did. Her argument was that keeping the zoning at A1, so just 3 homes, is totally manageable for the local watershed. The park can absorb that.
But 75 homes?
75 homes means 75 driveways. It means lawns, fertilizers, pesticides, and dozens of new stormwater runoff points. She argued it would be a permanent diminishment of the park's ecological value.
And it wasn't just the local conservation nonprofits raising red flags. The actual National Park Service weighed in.
Yes, and that carries a lot of weight. The park superintendent, George Lifford, went on the record officially opposing the initiation of this study.
Because he sees it as a direct encroachment on that legislative boundary we talked about.
Exactly. Even though they don't own it, they have a vested interest in what happens inside that line.
So that sets the stage for the political showdown, February 3rd, 2026, the Board of Supervisors meeting.
The tension in that room was really palpable.
Now, I want to clarify something for everyone listening. This vote that they were having, it wasn't a vote to approve the actual bulldozers and the building permits, right?
No. This was a procedural vote. It was a vote on whether to simply initiate the comprehensive plan amendment.
Initiate, meaning to study it.
Right. Basically, the board was just voting on whether to instruct the county planning staff to spend their time and resources looking into this proposal to see if it's even a viable idea.
Okay, but reading through the meeting transcript, it really felt like some of these supervisors were treating this initiation vote as a point of no return.
Well, that's the political reality of these meetings. In theory, a study is just a study. But in practice, let's look at the supervisors in the no camp.
That was Supervisor Yesley Vega and Supervisor Tom Gordy.
Right. Supervisor Vega's argument was basically, let's be real and stop kidding ourselves.
She flat out accused the initiation process of being a rubber stamp for developers.
She asked the county staff a brilliant trap question during the hearing. She asked them, when was the last time you studied a CPA? And then actually recommended a denial.
I loved that moment in the transcript. You could almost feel the staff scrambling to answer.
The deputy director of planning had to really think about it. And he finally admitted that the last time staff recommended a denial after doing a study was probably back in 2007.
2007, that is almost 20 years ago.
Right. So Vega's point was, if we vote to initiate this study, we are effectively voting to approve the development.
She said it was opening a door that they were not going to be able to close.
And then you had Supervisor Gordy, who took a slightly different angle. He brought up the Pandora's box metaphor.
The Pandora's box. Because of the master plan.
Exactly. You have to remember the context here. Prince William County just finished a massive exhaustive update to their comprehensive plan in late 2022.
And that plan was supposed to be the guiding document for the county all the way until 2040.
Right. So Gordy's argument was, look, we just spent years debating this map. We decided this specific land should be parks and open space.
And now just a few years later, a developer asks nicely, and we're just going to change it.
He argued that the development community is basically ignoring the plan. He pointed out that there are at least half a dozen similar requests coming down the pipeline for other properties.
So if they say yes to studying Lebenison, they are signaling to every developer that the 2040 plan is already obsolete.
Which is a very strong argument for maintaining stability and trusting the process.
But then you look at the yes camp, supervisors, Angry, Bailey, and Body, and they had some very compelling arguments of their own.
Supervisor Angry, in particular, took a completely different philosophical approach. He didn't focus on the environment or the 2022 master plan. He focused on private property rights.
Yeah, he was very passionate about that. He said, and I'm quoting from the transcript here, "This country is founded on generational wealth of people having land and selling their land."
It's a foundational American ideal. He argued that unless the federal government is actually going to step up with the money and buy the property, the owner has every right to maximize its value and sell it.
He was pretty unsympathetic to the Park Service's concerns. He even used this analogy about military bases.
Right, he compared it to people who buy homes near Davidson Army Airfield and then complain to the county about the helicopter noise.
His point was, the park is there. We all know it's there. But you can't tell a private citizen they can't build on their own land just because the park exists next door and wants a quiet buffer.
Exactly. And then Supervisor Bailey added some really important nuance to the yes side. She was a bit more pragmatic.
She brought up the idea of the county's toolbox, right?
Yes. She emphasized that the board cannot govern in a vacuum. She mentioned tools like the REPI grant.
The REPI grant, REPI, what is that exactly?
It stands for Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration. It's essentially a federal program that provides funding to help buffer military bases in federal lands from encroaching development.
Okay, so it's a pot of money to help conserve land.
Yes, but her point was that while these tools exist in theory, the county doesn't have them ready and funded right now for this specific parcel.
So because they don't have a checkbook ready to offer Linda Carr an alternative, Bailey felt they couldn't just shut the door on her application.
She also pointed to the broader regional housing needs. She felt the board had a responsibility to at least study the proposal and see if it could help ease the housing crunch.
And that brings us to Supervisor Body, who voted yes, but reading his comments, he sounded incredibly regretful about it.
He did. He explicitly stated that he wished the county had a fully funded PDR program in place sooner.
PDR, Purchase of Development Rights.
Right. For those who might not be familiar, a PDR program is where the local government essentially pays a landowner the financial difference between what their land is worth as open space and what it would be worth if they sold it to a developer.
So the owner gets the cash value of their asset, they get to keep owning the land, but they sign a permanent conservation easement saying it can never be developed.
It's the perfect compromise. But Body's frustration was that Prince William County hasn't fully funded that program yet.
So landowners like Linda Carr don't actually have that option. Their only real path to realizing the financial value of their property is to pave it.
Which left the board with a really difficult choice.
So we have a deeply divided board. We have environmental protection clashing with private property rights. We have the desire for a stable master plan clashing with an urgent need for housing.
And it all came down to the swing vote. The chair of the board, Dissandra Jefferson.
And her position is fascinating because geographically she has the most skin in the game. She lives in Montclair, which is very close to this site.
She understands the local dynamics better than anyone on that dais.
Mm.
And she made this really striking comment about the sounds of freedom.
Yeah, referencing the noise from the nearby Marine Corps base Quantico.
She was acknowledging that living in that part of the county means dealing with the reality of the base, the traffic, and the park. It's a complex environment.
But she directly pushed back on Supervisor Vega's argument that initiating the study is just a rubber stamp for approval.
She used a great metaphor. She said, the cake has not been baked.
The cake has not been baked, meaning just because we are voting to gather the ingredients and turn the oven on, it doesn't mean we have to eat the cake at the end.
Exactly. She ultimately voted yes to initiate the study, but she gave a very stern warning to the applicant right there in the meeting.
She said, "Do not take my vote for granted."
She made it crystal clear that the current proposal, the 75 homes with only 8 affordable units, is not something she would support as a final project.
She essentially demanded to play a much larger role in shaping the development if it's going to move forward.
So the final tally was 5-2 in favor of initiation, with Supervisors Vega and Gordy being the only dissenting votes.
Okay, so the study is officially happening. The gears of the county bureaucracy are turning. What exactly does this mean for the next year or so?
Well, it triggers a whole series of deep dive studies by the planning staff. One of the biggest hurdles is going to be traffic.
Right, because the staff report estimated that adding 75 homes would generate something like 434 additional vehicle trips every single day.
434 trips, and if you know Route 234, you know it already struggles with congestion.
Yeah, pouring that much new daily traffic onto Dumfries Road is going to be a major point of contention.
They're also going to have to do a rigorous environmental impact study, particularly regarding that Quantico Creek watershed we mentioned earlier.
And they have to assess the overall compatibility of shifting this site from a conservation role to a residential neighborhood.
Going from 0 activity density to 14 people per acre is a massive change in land use.
But beyond just the physical impact of these 75 homes, I want to circle back to the precedent this sets. Supervisor Gordy's Pandora's box.
Yes, this is perhaps the most significant outcome of the meeting. During the debate, Supervisor Angry asked the staff a crucial question. How many other private parcels exist within the park's legislative boundary?
And what was the staff's answer?
They didn't have the exact number on hand, but they confirmed that there are indeed other private parcels inside that line.
So by voting 5-2 to initiate this zoning change, hasn't the board effectively sent a signal flare up to every other landowner inside that boundary?
That's the fear. They're signaling that the Parks and Open Space designation on the master map is negotiable.
Right. If I own 10 acres of woods next door to La Benison and I watch Linda Carr get her land rezoned to RN2, which drastically multiplies the value of her property, I'm picking up the phone and calling my real estate lawyer the very next morning.
Like a rational economic response. And this is the core conflict of modern zoning that this case perfectly illustrates.
You have these comprehensive plans. There are these static, carefully negotiated documents meant to provide a long-term vision for a community.
But those static plans are constantly colliding with dynamic market pressures. We have a severe housing shortage, skyrocketing property values, and shifting demographics.
And when push comes to shove, the dynamic market usually puts immense pressure on the static plan.
Especially when the county doesn't have the financial tools, like a funded PDR program, to relieve that pressure by compensating landowners for conservation.
It leaves local governments with a really difficult binary choice. Either deny a citizen the right to profit from their property, or change the map and lose the green space.
And while the promise of 8 affordable townhomes was sprinkled in as a sweetener, even the staff admitted that affordable housing wasn't the primary driving factor behind this application.
But for the supervisors trying to tackle the housing crisis, any addition to the housing supply, even market-rate homes, is seen as a step in the right direction.
So we have a fascinating situation on our hands. A study is officially underway. We have a very nervous National Park Service watching its borders.
We have a landowner hoping to turn a long-held family blessing into a financial nest egg.
And we have a local community wondering if the dense forest at the end of their street is about to disappear.
All while Chair DeSunder Jefferson has firmly positioned herself as the ultimate gatekeeper for whatever final proposal emerges from this study process.
It will be incredibly interesting to see what the final design looks like when it eventually comes back to the board for a final binding vote, which likely won't be for another year or more.
It really makes you think about the permanence of the things we just take for granted in our communities. You look at a map, you see a massive green forest, you see a legislative boundary drawn by Congress.
And you just assume that it's safe, that it's a done deal.
Exactly. But as we learned today from the Lebenison debate, a line drawn by Congress without a congressional checkbook to back it up is really just ink on paper.
And a county's comprehensive plan is only as strong as the board's willingness to actually stick to it, especially when a compelling human story and a lucrative development proposal walks through the door.
That is the provocative thought I want to leave you with today as we wrap up. If a comprehensive plan can be amended and studied for changes the moment a developer asks nicely, is it actually a plan? Or is it really just a suggestion?
And does a federal boundary really matter if the government doesn't own the land inside it?
It is the multi-million-dollar question right now for Prince William County and for growing communities everywhere. We will definitely be keeping an eye on this one to see how the cake finally bakes. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening.